guys, it's Linda Winter from Winter Designs. So I have another towel topper. This is number 4. So this one is the sweet little vintage dress. So those of you that grew up with grandmothers cooking, teaching you how to cook, all of that, maybe you saw these in her kitchen. Maybe you made these. These guys here look like a little dress. So imagine this is the oven door or the refrigerator door or one of those nice little bars that you put somewhere. And this one has on the front side and on the back side. So we're going to use the full towel, a little bit different than the other ones that I showed that only used half. I'm also going to be using a ribbon. You can use rickrack, you can use bias tape, you can use whatever it is, but even Velcro if you wanted to, a little button or whatever. But this slips over and then you can see how these would line up and we would tie this. I want to talk about how this is made, and of course it's going to be made with my no-slip templates. This is the back side, and we're going to take a look right here, and you can see that no-slip template that grabs. So when I go to cut, and I go to cut, which we'll do in a minute, I'm going to get exactly what it is that I want to cut. So I'm going to backtrack for a minute because I talked about the 4 towel toppers. So I want to start with the first one. If you're new to sewing, quilting, cutting with a rotary cutter, this one is the easiest one. Why? It's bigger to work with, and it's just, you know, a little bit bigger to be able to get that towel inside of there. You can use a button, you can use snaps, which on the other 3 that I'm going to show you, and I've already filmed videos on those, button snaps will work, Velcro even, but this one, the vintage dress, it does work better with ties. But this guy here started out with the mask keeper. The mask keeper actually makes, let's see, my little mask keeper. That's what this was here. This to hold your masks. Back in the day when we were wearing masks, living and breathing with them, we had this little mask keeper here. And this guy right here gave you this template, gave you the ability to do that. Now you notice that I have You Had Me at Woof. So when I came out with this, originally I was just doing fabrics, but I decided to come out with the Fussy Cut. I'm going to give you more about the Fussy Cut later on this and on another one, the Apple Core, but I've already done a video on fussy cutting a little bit with the templates, so make sure you check that out. This one, the Mask Keeper template with the Fussy Cut, this is old. This is new, that Fussy Cut. So they work together. If you bought this a long time ago, you can buy this not only to make this, to cut the You Had Me at Woof, but also to be able to fussy cut if you wanted to one of these towel toppers. So that's the Mask Keeper, and again, I think it's the easiest one to make. I also think this one is super easy too. We can see that this is straight right here, and because this is straight, it means it's really easy to get that towel inside. I don't have to worry about a curve. I don't have to worry about a whole lot. I can tuck it in with a fold, but I can also just do a simple gather. And that came from my tab top. You can see this part here folds down, and depending on how big your bar is, how fat your bar is, you know, how wide this is, you may want to bring it down further. It also allows you to play with your fabric. So you get a front and a back showing, where on all the others, you really just see the front. This has been my favorite, but I think I'm going to like the dress the best. What I love though is you can play with all your towels. You can see here the doggies are my sister's kids. So Alexa, feed the kids. Wouldn't that be nice to be able to do that? So that comes from this guy here. That's the towel topper, the tab top. Then I had the Apple Core, and the Apple Core, you know, the traditional Apple Core is a quilt block, and this Apple Core also comes with the Fussy Cut. This is not the same shape as your traditional Apple Core. Why? It needed to be a little bit bigger to be able to get that towel in there. If it's a traditional Apple Core, it's a little bit too small, and getting that towel to fit in, it's just a lot. And you can see here, I only have one side of the towel. Same thing with this, one side of the towel. Same thing with this, one side of the towel. That's going to be a big deal when you're picking out your towels. So Apple Core, tab top, and the Mask Keeper, those are the 3 that I've already taught you how to do. So we're going to be looking at this dress, The dress, when I first came out with this was version 1. And you can see I've written fold and I wrote dress. Why? Because when these were cut, sometimes mistakes happen. I call them oops. So I have this on the website as an oops. You can see there's a fold over there. It says fold, but I didn't highlight it because we don't fold there. We can fold the fabric here. You don't have to. I'll show you why we would and why we wouldn't want to do that, but you want to fold the fabric here. I also want you to look at this. Since I had to make changes to this template, I decided to make this change. Now you can't see with it on top, so I'm going to flip it over. And when you look at this, yeah, they're not lined up the right direction, but I want you to see how big that curve is. And you can see this curve is much more deep, and you know, this one is more gradual. A gradual curve is going to be easier for you to cut. So I want to show you the difference in the dresses. This dress here was done with this version 1, and you can see that's a sharper curve than this one, the version 2. I'm going to flip these over. You might be able to see a little bit better from the back. And I don't have them all lined up perfectly, but you get the idea. Can you see right there? That part of the fabric there, that's from this curve that's more gradual. It still looks like a little girl's dress. It still looks adorable. It's just going to be easier for you to cut, easier for you to sew. Easier means faster. That means if you're going to be making these and selling these, or making these and giving them away, it's going to be faster and easier to do. If you're good with a rotary cutter and you're comfortable and you want to take advantage of this curve, again, the oops is a couple dollars cheaper, so you can find that on the website. Once I sell out of these, I won't have any more because I'm going to be selling this. But right now I have version 1 and version 2. And this one says fold, and this one says fold, and they're engraved, and it's in the right spot. So I'm going to put this away, and I'm going to show you a couple other dresses. So we looked at this. I think this is adorable for the holidays. It can be any holiday. And this towel, by the way, this is a double-sided where it has a pattern on the front and a pattern on the back, but no writing on the back. I want to show you the towel that came. Sometimes they come as sets. This came with that towel as a set. And look how cute this fabric is. I found this fabric, but look how cute this is too. So if you don't want to have a saying, then you don't have to, but look at it, still gives you a twofer. So this gives you the gingerbread house, gingerbread man, all that. Notice the direction though, it's upside down here. There's not really, it doesn't have to be right side, but it is something that you want to look at directionally. If you've got text, you want to make sure that that text is going in the right direction. So you have the ability to pick fabrics and to pick towels based on holidays. I think that's what makes this such a fun project, these towel toppers, because when you make these, you're making these for whatever holiday, but it sure is nice to give somebody a gift that is Valentine's or Easter or 4th of July or whatever it is. It just changes out their kitchen. And it's one more thing for those of you that like to sew and to give gifts, one more thing for you to give that doesn't cost a lot and doesn't take a whole lot of time. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. This towel, when I got it, it had front and back the same thing. You can choose to do that on the front and back. The front's going to show. The back's not going to show. So if you want to take one of your plain towels and put it on the back side, and then this will give you 2 for the price of 1, basically, because you can take this one on the front and then put a plain one on the back, vice versa. So all those fabrics that you have, if you've been working on a quilt, you know, grab those fabrics, look for tea towels or the towels that you can find that work for those. I like the tea towels, the weight. I talked about towels in some of my different videos, so you can go watch those. I want to show you a couple more towel options though, because you have different weights, different styles of towels. Some of them are more thirsty. If these are going to be just for looks, or if these are really going to be practical, then you want to try and find towels. If it's really a practical one, try and find the towels that are thirsty. These are great for dusting too. So if you want to find the towels that really do dust well and collect all that lint and everything else. But notice here, this is a twofer, but look how close this is to this. So this is going to be harder for you to do with a style that has that curve. So if you're going to do this right here, this towel, you're better off to use a straight edge or a straight edge when you're picking your towel topper template. So look at your towels and be thinking about which one works better. See the curve here and see how I have plenty of room here? If I had that curve here, it would be really close to that gnome for the holidays. You know, you're going to have some in that allowance, in that curve there, that's going to be lost. So you want to plan out the type of towel topper you want for the type of towel that you have. So think about that as you're working through those towels, if you have favorites. This one was a twofer. You had me at Wolf. This I used on a towel topper, but I also used the back side, and you can see what I did. I used the Fussy Cut Frame to fussy cut. You had me at Wolf. That was for that little towel, or the mask keeper that I had. Let me show you a couple other towels and then a couple options. This is a great one because you've got a saying here, but look at this. There's no pattern to this that has to scream Valentine's or Easter or sweet or whatever it is. You know, this is a great spring. This is a great happy feel. But if you wanted to do Mickey Mouse, this would be perfect for that. So when you find a towel that gives you 1 and 2, put this aside and do something else with it to be thinking about something special. So remember when I talked about towels that are thirsty versus towels that really grab all the lint and the dust? There are towels that are out there like this. And you can see this one has a serged edge. It's not as pretty of an edge. If that bothers you, you can fold this down and use an edge stitching foot or just top stitch along the way. Am I going to do that? Heck no. Absolutely not. Now, this is not a towel. This is a washcloth. But what I love about this is that it's a washcloth and it still has something on there. So I can still use this and make that fit inside. Let's see if I can get this opened up with one hand. Do you see how I can make that fit inside? So this will still work really well for a little dress towel topper. So the length doesn't have to be a long towel. So you look around when you're shopping and find different things. This one's a little scrubby. So there's a little scrubby here. If you have an applique or an embroidery machine, you can make your own. This is a rough kind of one of those scrubbies that you get at the, you know, in the kitchen supply area. So that's a good one. I also have this that I thought would be great for it too, depending on your machine. Do you all know what this is? See how it's thicker here and thinner? This is a diaper. So you can use diapers, especially if this is really going to be used, because this middle area right here is really going to be absorbent. And do you see how I can fold that and basically get that to fit inside of here? And I'll show you one that's pinned in just a minute, but I'm really just talking about different materials that we're looking at right now. All right, so this right here, it looks like it's a pillowcase. That's what I thought it was when I saw it, but they are curtains. I don't know if we can get all of that in, but these are curtains. And what I love about this is that I can cut this in half and cut this down to the length that I want. And this can be one front, and then I can just use a plain pillowcase or whatever material from a sheet or whatever it is on the back side, and then this can be used for a matching one. So if you're going to make two matching, or one for mom and one for sister or whatever it is, then look at the linens that you have that you don't use. Look at the linens when you go to those estate sales and see if you can find some things, because I love this. And I can tell you, I didn't pay a whole lot of money for this when I found it. So, you know, they're out there and people don't tend to do anything with them anymore, because nobody uses nice linens. Okay, so I mentioned folding them up, and do you see how right here, this is basically what we're going to be looking at. I want to have a fold and a fold because I want this to be centered. If you've got a plain old towel, then you can just do a gathering stitch. It's totally up to you. One last one I want to show you. So I came out with this template when it was Halloween, and I hoped that I would have time to do the Halloween one. Didn't happen. So you all know life gets in the way, but I want you to see what the plan was. I love these towels that have some embroidered design. I have an embroidery machine. Did I embroider this? No. Why? Because it's a whole lot cheaper than me taking the time to embroider. I also want to show you this example because I want you to see how puckery this is. So when I first started making tea towels and towel toppers, I said use SF101. I love SF101. But if you're going to do that, you need to do it on both or on none. Because when we pull this through, which you'll see me do in a minute, I've got puckers here. I can get that out, no big deal. I just have to press really well, take the time and press this well, but you don't really need any fusible on here on the interfacing. So we're going to do it without the interfacing. So I wanted to leave this one undone so you could see that. But I want you to see, you know, we're seeing this, we're not seeing this. So this right here, I mean, if we open it up, yes, we're going to see, but we're not having that show. This isn't reversible, so it's not like you can really see the back side, the lining. And again, you could use, if you wanted to use sheets or towels or whatever it is. Are you making a ton of these and donating them? You know, totally up to you. Now you can do this way. I wanted to do this way because I like the little spider. And my plan was to have this go inside. My plan was to have this. My plan was to have this right there. And then my plan was to have this. And you can see how cute that would be. Now this would be sewn on here, and then this would be stitched around, and this would be stitched around, and then I was going to use a black thin ribbon to tie. So it's totally up to you. Now I want you to see another option. Imagine that this has been stitched down here, so it's not a ruffle, but this basically would go this way. This would go inside here. So this would be stitched down and this would be stitched down. And again, I can put a button. I can put a whole bunch of buttons. There are so many fun ways. Let's see if I can find my buttons. There are so many fun ways to embellish. I had a whole bunch of buttons and I put them away. There are so many fun ways to embellish with buttons and doodads and rickracks and all of these things. You basically need, let's take a look, if you're going to do ribbon or whatever it is, rickrack. This right here, when I look at what I've got left and right, 19 inches is the minimum that I found works well. The thinner the ribbon, the easier it is for you to tie. And you also want to singe the edge there just with a match so that that doesn't unravel. You could stitch it down if you wanted to, but imagine to find the center, and we'll do one of these later on, find the center here, and when I attached this, let's go to this one because this one's undone. I just wanted you to see for Halloween, you can have some fun with that. All right, you can see here, I find the center, and you center this, fold it in half. And when you do that, we're basically just going to stitch. If I'm using white thread, then I can stitch on top of the white. I like to use black thread, and I would stitch just under the white and just under the white. And then you would tie those together, just as I have with the others. I wanted to show you a few other embellishments. This, of course, doesn't go. But do you see how this right here, let's find, and this doesn't go either, but do you see how the cute little bow ties? This is for a dog. For a dog's hair, but you have the clips and all kinds of things. You can cut that off and you can stitch that on. So if you have all of these little doodads that you can find, especially with the holidays, you know, really cute green one or a red one here for the holidays would look really cute. Okay, let's get all these out of the way and let's actually get started in the project. I'm going to grab my version 2. That's what I have. I've got this marker here. If you get the template, I highly recommend you get one of the metallic markers and then right fold and right fold. The version 2 will come from me. I'll have that already on there for you just so you know. Or version 1 if you got the version 1. If you got version 1, then it'll have the fold in the correct area. And you can see there's the dress. And it's pretty obvious this is a dress, but there are 4 towel toppers that you have. I'm going to pull this over too because I want you to see it didn't start from Beth McNeil. Almost didn't start from Beth McNeil. It really started from Jessica Page. She's a customer and a friend, and she called and said, why don't you make a template that does the little girl dress towel toppers? I'm like, oh, okay, what is that? And she told me about it, and I never got to it. And then Beth told me, oh, I used your this template and this template and this template, and I made the little girl dress. the way she did it was way too much work for me, and that's when I said maybe I should make a template. So you can see what she did. She did all this finish here. It's a whole lot more work than I would do. So you can see she used the ribbon, she used the Velcro, but again, it's a lot more work. Beth works at a project forever till she gets it just right. And those of you that know me, get her done. There's way too much work and time and effort that she's put into this, so I'm going to show you my cheater method to get her done. But this was from Beth. What I do like about Beth is that this was one side of the towel. There's no back side. I do like the two-sided towel though, because that means you can really use it. Okay, so I'm going to open up, this is my scissor case. I don't know if y'all have seen this before, but I love this guy here. And I'm going to pull out pinking shears. I'm going to pull out some sharp scissors that are larger. I'm going to pull out my precision scissors. I love the precision scissors, and tweezers if you want some tweezers there. All right, I'm going to get rid of all these other little doodads because we are not doing Halloween right now. We're going to do, it's not really Valentine's, but we're going to do, there's nobody like you, nobody like you. Let's get rid of this. And Monkey, my little monkey, just jumped down, and hopefully she won't jump up. She likes to be a part of the videos. So I'm going to open this up and I'm going to cut the towel first. Now what you're going to find is that a lot of towels, they're not even. So you can see here, if I lined this up on my mat and I lined up those edges, they're not even at all. I don't really care, because what I care about is that if I had the design up here, then I wanted to make sure that I gave myself enough room. I have no design on the back side, so it's not that big of a deal. What I am going to do is use the fold there for me to cut. And I've got a 2.5 by a 15.5 ruler that's just the perfect size. And you can use your mat if you want to for this. Again, I'm just lining it up on the fold because I did a press earlier, and I'll take my rotary cutter and I'll just cut that right open. I'm going to put this aside because I do need this other piece. So we're going to use this later on. I've already cut 1/2 of my dress, and you can see I didn't cut the neck. You'll see later on why I didn't cut the neck. So what I have here, and I'll do the cutting in just a second, but you can see I've got, this is the arm from the shoulder, and then underneath the arm, and then this is the fold down here. I'm going to take my fabric and I fold it in half, and I fold it in half. I folded this in half right sides together, and I'm going to fold this in half wrong sides together. And if we look at where the template is laid out, if I had turned it over here this way, I'm not going to have any success. So I want to make sure that my fold is here. I want to make also sure that these are lined up right here. That fold I can't do anything about, but these two I can have that lined up, or I can have it where it's not lined up. So we want to have that lined up, and I'm looking right now right up top here, and I'm going to turn this over here, and can you see that's not lined up? So I'm going to go ahead and scoot that to the edge, and then I'm going to double check back here. Now you can use the 45mm for this, but when we get right to here, the 28mm does work better. I'm going to show you both. I'm going to cut at the straight first. So we'll go ahead and cut. I'm just going to cut off, and then I'm going to cut around. Now when you cut around, just take your time on that, because we don't want to cut into the black. If you push hard, you can actually cut into the black. So I said I'm going to use this, but I want you to see right about there, I struggle a little bit getting close. So I'm going to grab that 28mm, and right inside of here, again, just take your time. And you can see how that 28mm gets right inside there. Now, this is going to be stitched together, so I don't have to worry that much about this, but we're going to take our two pieces. All right, so I like my style of towel topper for the dress better than any that are out there. I watched videos, you know, when Jessica called and told me about the towel topper, I watched videos and I'm like, I don't really like that dress because it looks kind of like handmade, homemade, and homemade not in a good way. So I didn't really like what they were doing at the neck. They would cut the neck in either a circle or a square, so imagine that was cut, and then they would snip, 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 and they would fold this down and they'd stitch that down. If it was a square, it's a little bit easier to do, but they would still stitch that down, and then they would end up on the front side putting rickrack or trim or something. I don't want to do that. I want a finished edge, but I don't want to work hard at it either, because get her done. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pin. Notice I didn't cut the black, and I chose a black and a gray so you all could see. I didn't cut the black because I don't need to. I'm just going to use my gray as my outline. It's a guide for me. And I'm lining this up. I also like doing the contrasting fabrics because I can see that I've got everything lined up accurately, or that I don't have things lined up accurately. Now you can use whatever foot on your sewing machine that you want. I like to use a scant 1/4 of an inch for this because I want to have as much of this dress as possible. But you can do a wider seam allowance if you want. It's just totally up to you. We're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch around. Let me get all this stuff out of the way. All right, I like to start on the left side so that I can use my foot as my guide. And I'm going to go ahead and put my foot down. You want to move your needle position to where it works for you. And I'm going to try to follow along. We have a foot called the Curve Master that Martelli made. And if you have the Curve Master, you can use it as a guide. An edge stitching foot, you know, it's going to want to go straight. So that's not going to work so well. If you have a machine that does needle down, definitely put it in needle down position because that's going to help you a whole lot. I have needle down on this machine. Do I know how to do that? No, because I've got like 20 machines and I haven't worked on this machine enough. But needle down really would help me. And I probably would have my seam allowance actually a little bit less than where I have it now, just because I like that seam allowance to be a little bit less. But again, we're going to be trimming this away, and it's just that top opening. And this is going to be the part that's going to be sitting over that door of your oven or of your refrigerator. I actually got so into making the tea towels that I bought, or the towel toppers, that I bought these little bars that you can screw into your kitchen island. I have 2 on my kitchen island now. And you can put it right in front of your sink. Lots of people tell me that they already have that bar right in front of their sink. I don't have one of those. I didn't have one of those. I do now. And I actually have 2. So I have those sitting in front. So when I am doing the dishes, I've got my towel toppers right there. And I don't use really pretty ones. I use the practical ones that I've made because the pretty ones, you know, I want to use when guests come over. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut my threads. And of course, I told you Monkey had to come up and join us. Let me find my scissors. All right, so what we want to do is just go in and we're going to do a real rough cut. If you wanted to save that black material, you certainly could, and you could use it for something else. I'm not going to cut too close because I want to snip all of this away. And there's a bunch of ways you can snip. You could, of course, use pinking shears for what I'm doing right now. You know, pinking shears would be nice, but I love pinking shears, but I kind of feel like with the curve that it doesn't get in quite as much as I would like. Again, we're not using the interfacing, so we don't have that as an issue. Remember that orange one that I showed you with the spider webs black, and then I think it was orange on the back side, the one for Halloween? So with that one, you know, it had the interfacing on there. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut inside of here and then snip away from me. Do y'all see what I'm doing? Now, these are very sharp scissors, so the only problem with doing what I'm doing is I could cut myself. So the reason why I do this is, to me, it's a little bit faster. I'll do the opposite in just a second. But what this is allowing me to do is cutting away, and I'm not close to that seam allowance. I don't have to worry about cutting my seam allowance. Do you see how close I can get to that seam allowance there? I'm going to show you the opposite of what we would normally do. And with this, yeah, I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but I really do have to be careful. And if you're making a bunch of these and you're tired, you know, chances are you're going to have to go back and restitch. Do you see how? I mean, yeah, I can go along and take my time, but again, get her done. So you choose what works for you. Pinking shears, doing what I'm doing now, doing what I did before. The other thing you can do too, You can do a little bit of a fold over. Do you see what I'm doing? And do you see what that's giving me? I, again, don't think that does as quite a good a job unless I do that a whole lot more often. But do you see how that's taking a little bit out of that? Let's see if I can lay that down so you can see. And I'm not doing it neatly. I'm just trying to get some of that bulk away. So when this does turn to the right sides, that I have the ability to have everything laying nice and flat. Okay, so I said turn to the right sides. So what do? We're going to turn to the right sides. I like to take the lining. I'm going to pull the lining through, and I mentioned that we're not going to have to finish this off anyway. So we've already finished it off here, but I've got to figure out how to sew everything together. If you've ever done the pillowcase method or the hot dog or the taco or whatever it is, you know, it's kind of like that, but I'm sure there are a bunch of different methods, but this is the one that works well for me. So we're going to get this started so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm pulling this through, and what I'm going to do is just finger this, and you can already see how this area right here has laid out pretty flat. Let's look to see what kind of trimming I did here. Do you see those notches that I did? And I said I didn't like those as much because I didn't feel like, you know, I'd have to do them really, really close. So I'm going to, again, go closer inside of here because I want all of this to lay flat. So you choose what it is that you do, but see how close that gets to the seam, but I don't have to worry about that seam. Okay, so let's go back to this. We're going to flip this over. And again, because there's no seam interfacing on here, I don't really have to worry about all those puckers. We're going to head over to the iron, and I'm going to give this a little bit of a press from both sides, but you can see already how this is laying pretty flat. So let's get to that iron. I love Martelli's wool mat, and if you have a wool mat, wonderful, but don't put it directly on your cutting mat like I have here. I have a no-slip sheet underneath there. I sell both of these on my website. I have bundles where you can get a really great deal. Why do I love it so much? This grabs your table, that no-slip material. It also protects the table a little bit too. But again, I wouldn't get in the habit of doing this on your cutting mat like I am doing here. Because if you're using steam or you've got one of those super hot irons, I'm not promising you that you're not going to damage your mat. But that wool mat, if I had to do any pinning right now, I could go pin, pin, pin right into this. There's so many reasons why a wool mat makes all the difference in the world. Okay, so this is what we've got. What do we want to do? Well, we want it to look like this, and we want these to be seamed, finished. We want these to be finished. We want these to be finished, these to be finished. I'm going to turn this over here. So we're going to go back to the iron in just a second. We're going to press this, and we're going to press this, matching those up. I'm going to do the same thing. We're guesstimating, but I'm basically going to press this. Then I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to increase my stitch length and I'm going to stitch that. Why? I want, when I put that towel in here, not to miss the back, not to have wider on the front, narrow on the back. So over to the ironing board again. We're going to fold this up. I'm going to work from the bottom side. And again, I could use pins if I wanted to. I'm going to grab this. You guys know I love a good seam press. This is one I sell. This little guy right here, and these are wonderful, but who knows where mine is? I don't know. I go from one sewing machine to another, and this isn't where I normally sew, so it's over with my other sewing machine. So, all right, so notice what I've done. I've done one side. I'm going to flip this back, and we're going to fold this here. I'm going to look to make sure that I've got these lined up pretty accurately. It's not the end of the world if you don't. We're just trying to give ourselves a head start on having a nicer finish. If you've made these before or you've ever done anything where you had to tuck something into one side and the other, then you know that makes a difference. All right, so we've got those two. I want to jump back to this guy here. I'm going to do the same thing. Look at that amount that you have here. And that's about what we're going for here. And when you do these assembly line, oh my gosh, cut, 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 press, 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 or sew the neck, and then turn and press, press, press. Do all the steps assembly line, and you can whip these out super fast, especially if you're using the same kind of fabrics. the same towels, the same materials. It doesn't have to be, but when you don't have to make decisions about, does this towel need to go higher? Does this towel have the same on the back, different on the front? You know, that makes a difference. So, you know, that kind of stuff that you do. Are you making things for Christmas for everybody? Everybody's getting the same thing? Or does everybody get something different? Okay, at the sewing machine, I'm going to increase my stitch length as long as it will go. And I can already see, look what I did. Do you see how these aren't lined up right? So we're going to start over on this side, and we're going to look to see. And it may just be because it's laying off my table, but we will see. Okay, I'm just going to stitch here. And remember, this is a long stitch length, so it may gather a little bit. We're going to rip this out later on, so it's not like it's in there for good. So we're going to do one side, and I'm caught somewhere. Let me get my scissors. And we've got a thread caught somewhere in here. All right, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Yeah, and by getting that caught here, you can see it gathered up a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and just ungather that some. All right. And if you've got a table, make sure that this doesn't get caught on the other side. Okay, now let's look at what we have here. I'm going to bring it over here, and let's look to see, was it just the way it was laid out or the way that I pressed? Yeah, do you see right here? These don't line up right. So I'm going to flip over here. Let me just see if it was just the way that it was laid out at the pressing mat. All right, so this guy here needs to go back a little bit. Not a big deal. I'm just going to, with my finger, do that. And again, remember, this is a tea towel topper that somebody's going to be using to wipe their hands or to clean up the mess. So it's not the end of the world if these don't match up perfectly. If you're selling them, you know, then you're going to want to have this exactly right. Partly because it's just faster. You know, if you're making these and selling them, then the assembly line method is going to help you out a whole lot. Okay, so I've stitched and I've stitched. I have a long stitch length. Before we forget, let's go back and decrease our stitch length. About a 2-7 works just fine for me. Okay, so how do we make this here and this here, all of these pretty? So what we're going to do is we're going to fold these over. I've already done a little top stitch here. We're going to be looking at this and this. And we're going to be saying, okay, so I want, whoops, here we go. So what do I want to do? I want this and this to be lined up. What we're going to do is bring these inside. And it seems very strange, but I'm going to start at the end, and I'm going to bring these ends together. All right, so let me go back and show you what I did. All right, so we're going to grab, this is the front. Doesn't really matter right now, but this is the front. I want to stitch this side here to this side here. So we're going to be flipping this inside and flipping this inside. So I'm going to grab these two edges, and I'm going to pin. Now we're going to be finagling this as we go. Again, if you've done one of those methods where you're having to turn and kind of make sure everything is tucked inside, that's what we're going to be doing. You can use clips, you can use pins. I'm going to use pins because that's what I have right here. Now I'm not going to pin the whole way. I'm going to go from point to point, or from shoulder to, you know, the base. This is the base. I'm going to go underneath the arm right now. All right, so we're going to, and here comes Monkey. And let's make sure that Monkey's not getting in the way. All right, and I'm going to put a pin in here. I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch that one piece. I'm not going to go any further. I don't need to pin all of this. I'm going to take my time. You could take the time and pin in the middle if you wanted to. You could pin a whole bunch of times. Totally up to you. All right, so I've got my seam allowance back to where I want it. I've got my finished edge here. That's where we're going to be starting. You can change your needle position if you want to. 1/4 of an inch seam allowance to me works really well. Okay, I'm going to back stitch. And when we do this, we want to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. And you can use your foot as your guide. If you need to take your time, go ahead and take your time with this. I've got the pins in there. Some of you like to live dangerously and sew over those pins. I'm not going to do that. but it's up to you. You know, you're a risk taker in the sewing machine or in the sewing room, then go right ahead. Okay, so I sewed over that pin just since I said I wasn't going to. All right, back stitching there. All right, so what are we gonna do? I'm gonna go ahead and continue to pull this out. And now I want to work on, this is gonna be from the one bottom underneath the arm to the other side underneath the arm. So we want to get to where we can see that edge coming. And you can see I'm just taking my time pulling, and right there is the edge. And I want to do the same thing over here. If I pull too much, this right here, the inside of the dress, that part might catch. I don't want that to catch. So I'm just going to fold that back out of the way. If you've done that hot dog method, we don't want all of that to catch inside of there. Okay, this has been sewn here, so I'm going to pin this together here. Then I'm going to pull nice and taut here. And do you see how that fabric, let me show you. See how that's wanting to peek out and get caught? I don't want that in there, so I'm going to push that back down. And just make sure that nothing gets stitched. I'm taking my time to make sure that everything's lined up. You could go ahead and pin and pin and pin and pin and make sure that nothing was there, but I'm just doing a part at a time. All right, so you can see if I take the time to pin here, I can do that. I'm just gonna be pulling taut. Okay, we're starting right at that corner where I've already stitched. I'm gonna back stitch again. And I'm actually gonna remove that pin and I'm gonna come over to here. I'm just gonna get my fingers in between and I'm just gonna hold, I don't know if you can see, I've got this finger right here, right inside of here. What that's gonna do is keep this tense, taut, okay? Just a little bit of tautness. And a little bit of tension isn't a bad thing when it comes to sewing. We're not pulling hard here because I do not want to stretch this fabric out and then have this arm and this under the arm and all that area not match up with the other. So that is not the goal. I'm looking at my ends to make sure they're still lined up right. If you want to grab tweezers to hold that, that would not be a bad thing. I don't have any tweezers that are near, probably underneath, oh, like right in front of me. Okay, so what do? We've stitched that. Now we're going to continue on. And when I get to where my folded edge is sewn down, then I know it's time for me to stop. And what's there? My folded edge right there. So I'm going to sew this last side here, and I've done half of the dress. Sewing this down gives me another signal of, oh yeah, it's time for me to stop. If you don't do that, you may continue on and you may have sewn the bottom of the dress closed. We need the bottom of the dress open because that's where we're going to put that towel inside of there. So I put a pin there. And again, I can put a pin inside of there if I want to because we've got a curve there, but I'm going to go ahead and just start at that corner, back stitching as you go. Now, if you had the interfacing on here, SF101, you'd be working with a little bit more stiffness. But again, if you do it on both pieces, I think the tension would be more consistent. So if you want the stiffness that you get from an SF101, then go right ahead. I'm going to feel inside here. I've got my finger inside to make sure that the rest of the dress is not getting caught as I'm stitching. And again, if you wanted to grab those tweezers and pull, then you can do that. All right, so what are we doing? All right, we have done one side. This is the bottom of the dress from there to underneath the arm. This is the shoulder right here. So we've sewn one side to the shoulder and then from the shoulder down and then underneath the arm. All right, so what are we going to do? We're going to be pulling through and we're looking for the next area that we're going to be sewing. And we're going to be looking for that folded area. There's the fold. And there's the fold, and that lets me know, again, it's my signal, you know, if I'm sewing and it's late or I'm tired, I need signals like that. I need little signs that tell me, you know, whoops, don't mess up. If you've ever put, you know, back in the day when I was sewing clothes and you put a sleeve in backwards and you don't know it till that dress is all done and you put it on and you're thinking, what's wrong with my shoulder? The sleeve was in backwards. You won't even know it till it's already done and too late and you're like, oh, the heck with it. I'll just walk funny. All right, so I've got my pin. I'm going to be pulling here. And again, I'm looking for, Can you see that straight edge to the next side right here? So I'm going to grab those two edges. It's easier probably on that gray to see. There you go. Okay, so we're going to pin those two. Do you get the idea of what I'm doing here? I'm taking the time on this because some of you have not done this before. Others of you are going to be like, come on, Linda, get going. But I'd rather give you the time now because this is a great technique to use for a bunch of things where you want finished edges to be where they're not going to show. All right, we're going to back stitch here. It's having those nice finished edges where those raw seams are not going to be there. And again, I'm a big time cheater, so any method that helps me get through the process and lets me cheat. And again, get your tweezers right underneath you because those tweezers allow you to grab right at the edge. I'm just kind of using my finger there. But the tweezers, if you've ever done any piecing of blocks and you want those two to join. Okay, so we've done that. What are we doing? We're going to pull. And you can see how I'm kind of pulling through, not pulling hard, because again, I don't want to stretch this fabric. I don't have any interfacing on here, so I could distort this fabric. We're dealing with cross grain, bias, straighter grain, all at the same time. So I want to take my time. And I want to look to see, you can see here I've got a straight edge. This is going to be a longer straight edge to right there, right there. So we want to get those two to where I can see. I'm just going to twist this a little bit to be able to grab a little bit more. And we're going to continue to pull. And you can, if you want to, not even get to that edge. I'm going to do that since it doesn't seem like it wants to come. So I'm going to stitch a little bit, back stitch. And as I get a little bit closer, I'm going to see if I need to get this out from underneath the sewing machine. If I can get this to line up without going from the sewing machine, do you see how I'm kind of pulling here? And I'm just looking to see that I've got about the same amount of consistency that I'm pulling on these. And I'm seeing my edges right on top here and right below. So I'm just going to hold those two. And we're almost done. At least with the top of the dress. And again, when you get in the routine of this, where this isn't new to you, then you're going to be able to whip these through. Okay, I've got my edges. I just want to make sure that I've got them lined up here. And you can use a stiletto, you can use tweezers, you can use whatever. I'm just using my fingers here. Back stitch. All right, we're going to have to pull again because what are we looking for? We're looking for that seam, that finished folded over edge. And I don't know if you could see, but it just came loose. And now all that bulk that I had, it all popped free. Okay, so you can see folded edge. Folded edge. So all I need to do now, you can pin it if you want to, or not. Again, you'll get comfortable, you know, again, are you a new sewer? Are you experienced and saying, again, I could have been done, I could have made another one in that amount of time? That's okay. We're just taking our time here to make sure that this method works for you. It took a while for me to figure out this method, but once I got this, especially this folded edge here, you know, it just made my life a whole lot easier and made the quality of what I was doing a whole lot better too. Okay, what are we going to do? We're going to grab our scissors. You can do the pinking shears if you want to. You can do the scissors. We're going to trim off. This is the folded edge, so I don't want to cut too much. I got a bunch of threads there. And we'll deal with some of that later on. But you can see right here, this has not been trimmed. So I want to go in and we're going to, again, you can choose to do this. You can do the away from you like I did before. Remember how I did that? My finger underneath, I'm just holding it very carefully so I'm not slicing my finger open. But you can see how fast and easy it is for me to cut. I don't need to cut straight. I just need to cut through to give that fabric a little bit of stretch. I want it to be able to handle those curves when I turn this right side out. We're going to cut that corner off there. And this is pretty much a straight edge, so you could trim that if you want to. I'm going to leave it as is. I'm going to go to the next corner. We're going to cut off that corner. And then again, I'm going to be Just giving this a little bit of freedom of movement, just to be able to stretch a little bit as I turn this right sides out. And when I have this dress with those sleeves, especially underneath the arms, then this is going to be able to lay nicely. That neck area, we've already addressed that because we did that right from the very start. And again, if you've got a bunch of threads here, you know, you can address them later because they'll, no matter what you do here, they're going to show up later on too anyway. Remember, we are going to be ripping out those stitches and we'll be stitching that down with the towel inside. And if this is your first time, then maybe black is not the best color to use because it's harder to see. Okay, so we have trimmed. We're going to look to see here. Right inside of here, you can see I pulled that out. I'm going to snip off some of that corner. We're going to pull that back through. We're basically just going through what we just did and making sure that we've gotten rid of any bulk. Now, we could continue on. I'm going to go ahead and flip because I get the idea. Okay, right here. Remember, that is the opening at the bottom. So we're going to flip this through. And you're going to push and prod a little bit. And you're going to say, what in the world? I've got a big circle. Nope, we want to keep going and keep going. We're going to go to the ironing board in a minute. But we're going to right now just push. Okay, my fingernails work right now just to give this a little bit of shape before we put that iron to it. I like to use pinking shears or some scissors that are not super sharp to be able to poke out those sleeves where it goes right underneath the arm. So you can see I'm pushing out there. All right, we're going to come over here. Let's go over to that pressing mat that I have, my wool pressing mat, and I'm going to pull this a little bit. And you can see I'm just pulling this away, pulling that so those seams are opening up a little bit. Okay, that's on the straight edge there. I'm going to do the same thing over here. That way when I press this, those seams are already wanting to go where they should be going. All right, just give it a little bit of a pull. You can right inside, push your fingers if you want to. And I'm going to try to find my scissors in just a second because I want to poke those sleeves out so that they're nice and crisp. But you can see what I'm doing here is just kind of giving this a little bit of a gentle tug. I will tell you that it's worth the time to spend a little bit more on pressing and on all of this. You know, if you're a getter-doner like me, you think you can get away with this kind of stuff, and it's not really the case. Can you see what I'm doing here? I'm taking those scissors. I'm going to flip it over so you can see from the gray a little bit easier. I'm going to poke that corner, not too hard, and then I'm running along inside of there, just trying to give that a little bit more shape and a little bit more definition before I put that iron to it. There are some really cool pressing techniques and really cool turning techniques to get really sharp points. You may have watched some of those great YouTube hacks. So if you've got some projects that really require, you know, nice sharp finished edges, then go ahead and watch some of those videos. All it takes is time. All right, so I'm going to give this a good press here. And I'm going to continue to go back with my scissors and press open a little bit. And notice what I'm doing here. I've got my finger inside here and just kind of holding that so that that opens up a little bit. We'll do the same thing over here. And if you work from the underside where it's not going to show as much, you know, then you're going to have a little bit better result. The black and the gray, so much contrast there. From the front side, I would see if I didn't do a good job pressing. So we'll flip it over in a minute and see how this looks. All right, so a little bit more pressing. And again, I'm just pulling where I need to. And I am going to get those scissors to go to the corners one more time. You can see right inside of here. I want to push a little bit. They're great turning tools, all kinds of cool gadgets out there. If you're a gadget girl or guy, then you know all of those things. I'm going to push right here. All right, and interfacing would change everything. Right now it would be much stiffer. So you make the decision if you want that stiffness. Okay. We're going to flip over to the front, and we're going to see if we need to make any changes to this, because that black is going to show the gray really well. All right, and you can see that looks pretty good. All right, so I'm going to press in half at the shoulders. And then we're going to look at our towel and see what we need to do. Line up those shoulders right here. And line up over here. And again, we've got threads at the bottom. We're going to be ripping those out anyway. Let's find our towel. And maybe I put it underneath. No, right here. Okay, good. All right, so let's take a look at our towel. We've got a towel for the front, a towel for the back. You're welcome to work on the back side first. If you want to work on the folds and the pleats to kind of practice, it's up to you. Remember, it's a tea towel topper, so not a big deal. And I am cutting the threads, even though I'm going to be ripping those stitches out later on. I just want to get rid of some of this stuff since I'm going to be putting that towel inside. We want to grab some pins. I don't think clips work quite as well for this part of the process. I'm going to open this up here. And the best thing to do is to look at your towel and to say, I've got this guy right here. I don't have a lot of text up at the top, so I don't have to worry. I don't have a lot of design up at the top. So what I want to look at is folding in half. You can put a mark with it. You can snip with your scissors, or you can put a pen in there. I'm just going to give a little crease here. And then I'm going to put a pin here, a little bit further down. And I like to do a fold that's kind of on the diagonal, where on the back side you can see how it's folded over. We don't want to keep that, but I like to start where it's a little bit more of a diagonal. And you can see when I get that, that's going to give me just a little bit more of a dress shape going out this way. So I'm going to go ahead and put a pin there. We are going to be changing that, so don't worry about that. And if you look at the distance from here to here from that pin, then I'm going to be basically doing the same thing. You can take any of the measuring tools that are out there. I've got my set of templates that are for the box it, place it, square it templates that are really great for this too. But I'm eyeballing right now. All right, so we're going to look to see a little bit more of an angle. Can you see how this is more straight and that has more of an angle? So I want to get this angled out a little bit more. Again, you can do a pleat. I mean, you can do a gather if you want to. All right, so you can see what I've got here. And I'm going to put a pin here. And you can see if we look at where the center is here, I've got a whole lot that I've got to tuck in. So I'm basically going to bring this over to here. And you can see I've got a little bit more that I can play with here. And if you want another pleat, you can add another pleat. If you don't like that pleat, then you can just, let's flip that over, and you can fold that back like this. You can fold that back like this. It's up to you. Do you see how that gets rid of that additional pleat? I'm going to put a pin there. And the way that I've done this is it's catching all those layers on the back too. All right, so let's do the same thing over here. So we're going to fold this back over this way, and then we're going to fold that back over this way. And we're going to look to see this space here. I need to make that a little bit wider. And there's 1,000 different ways to do this. What I'm really looking at is to see this width. And can you see how that's too narrow? So I want to go a little bit here. I'm going to put some pins in that. And then I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to go a little bit wider here. Okay, can you see how that's basically where I want it to be? All right, so I've got a big, very aggressive pleat here. I've got no pleat over here that's really that aggressive. So you would spend the time and work on that. I'm going to go ahead and just do this real quick and do this real quick. And I know I put a pin there somewhere. We'll grab another one. And then I mentioned that back side. Those backs are not even. So let's see. That's looking pretty good to get inside there. So you can see how here it's going to be basically the same. Let's look at the back side. See how this goes down and this goes down? We've got to change that. So I'm going to take this pin, this one here, leave the other one in there. And I want to bring these up so they're lined up more straight. I'm lining that up so it's more straight, more even with the top edge. That just makes this, when I stick this inside, work a whole lot better. Same thing over here. I'm going to take that pin, and we're going to line that up. And then we're going to see if that adjusts anything on the back side or on the front side. And I think Monkey's wanting to come over and join us again. Hopefully she won't. And there we go. Okay, so you can see how this is going to be a tight fit inside of there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this down at the sewing machine, and I'm going to bring this over just a little bit. And when I go to the sewing machine, the reason I want to stitch this down at the sewing machine is I want all of this inside here to get caught. All right, so we've pinned in place. We're going to go to the sewing machine and stitch this down. Now I want to have all of this stitched down because I don't want any of this popping out underneath on the back side at an angle. Those angles, they might give a nice look on the front, but they're not going to give us a nice look on the back if they don't get caught. The other thing too is I've got this stitch line now that helps us so that when we do stick this inside, we know we've got to have this past that stitch line. I don't mind this being a little bit too big. I would mind this being a little bit too small. So let's take a look and see. What I mean by that is this right inside of here. Just see from edge to edge, right inside of there, it's a little wide. When I look at that seam allowance that I have here and that seam allowance in there, it's okay because when I put this inside, and I'm choosing the black as the top, this is going to be the outside. You could choose the gray. If we look at this right here, we could choose the gray as the outside. Remember, we're going to rip those stitches out, but I'm going to use the black because I like it picking up on the there's nobody like you. All right, so we're going to place this inside, and I've got that stitch line, and I'm just going to kind of get this from edge to edge. And I can feel right up here, I've got a lot more towel than I have here. You can use your mat if you want to and line everything up so that it's consistent. I'm just going to go ahead and put a pin here. And I'm going to look to see over here that this is kind of laying flat. All I'm doing is just kind of giving this an eyeball. And I've got a pin here, and I'm going to put a pin over here. And again, I can feel here and I can feel here. I'm going to pull this up a little bit. The other thing I'm going to do too, even though I have folded this over at the very beginning and stitched this here, and I stitched that other side here, look to see where the pins are. That's where my pin is coming through right here. And here's where the pin is coming through here. So you can see that width right here. That width right there is pretty consistent with what is here. So as long as I'm stitching somewhere along that stitch line, I should be good. So remember the stitches that I have here? This is a good time for you to grab whatever and get those stitches out. I'm going to pull, and notice how I've got right in the middle there because I did that long stitch line. I'm able to pull that out. And again, these threads that are here, we're going to trim all of that up later on. But that right there, that looks like it's the back side, my bobbin thread. So if I can get that to come out now, then that's one less thing. See how I was able to pull that whole thread out? That's that bobbin thread. That's one less thing that I have to fool with. Okay, that's on the front side. Let's do the same thing on the back side. Those stitches have already done their job for us. And do you see what I mean about this right here? Can you see that stitch line right there? I want to make sure that that is inside here. So I'm just using my tweezers. Once I take those stitches out, then I'm going to go back and double check that. I'm going to go right in the middle, and I'm just going to loosely tug. And I love these tweezers because they let me pull and get all of that out, and I'm not really popping that thread. I'm just taking it nice and loose, and if I feel that it's getting tight, then I'm just going to pull with my hands, and that lets me pull all that out. Okay, so let's go back and look at that stitch line that was there, and these guys that are here, I am going to trim those off. And then I've got one over here that looks like it's loose. Okay, so this guy here, get rid of that thread. Anything I can trim before I stitch, I'm going to be better off. Okay, this guy right here, I need to push that inside. I didn't pin that. I pinned at the beginning, I pinned at the end, but I do want to make sure that those are tucked inside of there. I like to stitch from this front side because I want my prettier stitches to be showing. So right inside, I'm just holding this tightly here. And smaller pins really do work better than these bigger pins for this kind of a process. That way you can get more. All right, I've got a thread there, and then we're going to stitch this down. I don't have any top stitching that I have to worry about. I'm just going to use my pins as my guide for where to stitch. All right, and a lot of times when you're pulling these threads, they're attached to the towels, so don't just automatically pull, because especially a cheap towel, you know, a cheaper towel, they do tend to unravel a whole lot more. Okay, I'm going to start not right at the edge because I want to start stitching a little bit and then back stitch a little bit. So we're going to double check to make sure everything is good, that we're tucked in, and we're good at the sewing machine. Getting started, about 1/4 of an inch or so in, and I'm going to put my foot down. I am going to get rid of that needle, put that needle down first, get rid of the pin, I should say, and I'm going to stitch just a little bit, and I'm looking at my stitch length. I've got a 2/7. I'm going to back stitch here, and I'm just going to take my time, and if you do need to hold everything in place, you can use tweezers or scissors or whatever it is, just to tuck that towel inside. The tweezers work really well because they've got that sharp point. I think everything is good, so I'm just going to kind of hold everything down. And this table, if you're going to have this sitting on top of there, it might get in the way, just like it did for me. All right, so we're going to stitch here. At the end, I can see this is lined up nicely. If it doesn't line up nicely, that's where you can take something and just kind of hold it right in here. I'm going to pretend that it's not lining up nicely and just hold that to the end. Back stitch. And we're going to double check the back side to make sure that we're good to go. All right, you can see the stitching there. Yeah, and I felt my machine messing up a little bit, so that's just a little bit of bobbin mess. So if you wanted to use gray thread, that would help. But let's take a look at what we've done. All right, so we've worked on the front side, and we've got our threads that we want to trim off. And then we've got threads over here that we want to trim off. You would do the same thing on the back side. I've already gone ahead and done this, put those pleats in, and then top stitched inside of there. We would stick this right inside. And again, we're looking at edge to edge. And put a pin, and then make sure in that center area, when you're flipping that over, that you're not seeing that middle area popping out. I'm not going to do that, but what I am going to do is show you how we're going to do the ribbon. Okay, so we're going to take this ribbon. We've done the one side. And I've got black ribbon, black polka dots. You might want to have not only the black, but add a little piece of red on top, add some buttons. It would be really cute with a little white heart, a white heart, a white heart, or a red hearts going down. You decide what it is you want. I've gone ahead and cinched the ends with a match, so that's not going to unravel on me. I'm going to fold in half here and right there. And you can see right about here was where I folded before. So I'm just going to open that up. This does not have to be perfect. This is going to go right kind of on top of halfway on, halfway off of the dress and where that towel is. I'm going to put a pin here. And I'm going to put a pin here. And I'm a lefty, so I pin opposite of what is the easy way, the right way. But in this case, it actually works out okay for me. Notice I'm pinning at the top. I'm going to stitch down here. I'm going to come up, and I'm going to stitch over here and stitch down. So my pin is not really holding in the area that I'm going to be stitching. It's just holding that ribbon for me. So we're going to put our needle down, open up that towel out. I don't want to be on the white because I've got black thread. I'm just holding it in place instead of back stitching. And as I stitch, I'm using the white stitches on the ribbon as my guide. Keep that towel flat so we're not creating puckers. You know, if you did a gather, no big deal, but I don't want to create any additional. And again, if you are using a table, just make sure it's not getting caught. And when I get close to the edge, I am going to hit my needle down button. I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to come up this side. I'm going to hit the needle down, or just bring it down, pivot, and we're almost done. We would do the same thing on the back side. When you get to that end, needle down, just lock everything in place. All right, so if you had embellishments, now would be the time to add all those little embellishments. So you would do the ribbon on the back side just like we did here. So we take a look at our little towel, and how adorable. This would be on the back side, the ribbon would be on the back side, we'd be all set. If you didn't want stitches to show, if you decided you wanted to add here, you could have done that when you were working on the front side. I find that really makes the turning and getting those edges consistent a lot harder. So I don't mind if I am stitching here, especially with buttons or anything else. I don't mind that those buttons and things are going to be showing here. Okay, so trim your threads. Again, we would go back to that back side, stick this in, and away you go. This is that cute little vintage dress towel topper. I mean, how cute and adorable is that? And really, if you quit all of the talking that I'm doing and you just get to the doing, and you do this assembly line, boom, 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 you can do these really, really fast. And if you're really good, go shopping after the holidays and then get the towels when they're on sale and buy them in bulk so that everybody that you know that cooks, or all those people that don't cook, this is a great thing to add to their kitchen because it'll never get used except when they're washing their hands. So I think this is something you all will like. I hope so. You can head over to my website, winnerdesigns.com. When you go to the search box, depending on whether you're on the phone or whether you're on your tablet or on your computer, find that search box, and in the search box you're going to type in towel topper, or you can put topper, either way. And when you put that in, hit that enter, and you'll see the towel toppers that I have. There's the tab top. I have a bundle that gives you the 4 templates. There's the mask keeper, the towel topper, dress template version number 2. That's one we're working on. And so you can see I've even got kits there for you. And there's that oops that I talked about. If you like that larger curve that makes it look more like a fitted dress, then you can pick that one up too. So those are available for you on the website. Remember, I always have a coupon code, so read the descriptions for all of my videos, because you'll find in the videos there's a nice little description there that tells you about links and websites and coupon codes. If you do Facebook, I always post specials and sales, especially during the holidays. So if you're on my Facebook page, Winner Designs for Sewing and Quilting, or you can go to facebook.com/Linda Winner Designs. Winner Designs was taken. My phone number you'll see down below, but it's 850-449-0259. And I'm so glad you joined me today. I have one more thing I want to talk about, and I want you to stay tuned. This cool table that I'm working on right now, this is brand new. When I'm sewing, it gives me more stability, and it's such a large surface that I can have my cutting mat. I could bring my wool over, my wool mat. It was just harder for me to film and not have it in the way, but I could have my pressing mat over here as well. well. And it accommodates larger and smaller sewing machines, and it gives you a whole lot more stability. I'm going to be doing a video on this table and giving you more details about it later, but I am loving it. I think it's something that if you're looking for a really great table, it's electric. It goes up and down, so you can adjust it for your back, for your heels, for your shoulders, for whatever it is that aches. And it's just a cool thing. So I'm going to be doing a video on that too, so stay tuned. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great time making towel toppers. I think it's a cool gift, and we're kind of retro because this is a vintage dress. So thanks.